suggesting that Pezeshkian does not have control over the military, or at least those who are in control of the drones and the missiles. So we have been hearing some conflicting messages out of Iran, suggesting that the command, the chain of command is
civilians have been warned to evacuate, with reports of dozens of Iranian Revolutionary Guard officers fleeing the capital. 2 soldiers from the Givati brigade were moderately wounded, with Hezbollah fired anti-tank guided missiles at an Israeli position inside Lebanon. In an incident along the border, 8 more soldiers.
Get fast, powerful relief of your worst symptoms, like nasal congestion. Claritin clears.
Tax Act has experts who can help you file your taxes, or they can just do it for you. And what's great about
Moving to the separate market attack, 5 seriously, including the son of Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, but no casualties reported so far. Now let's bring in our IOTV editor-in-chief, Steve Leibowitz. Steve, what more can you tell us about some of the latest dramatic developments?
Well, we hear the leaders of both the United States and Israel both emphatically calling for the surrender of the Iranian military. Trump is saying unconditional surrender. Netanyahu is saying you have to put down your arms, you won't be harmed. He's telling the Revolutionary Guard to surrender. We're on the next, so it's connected to the military section of the oil facilities, not to the civilian sections, so to speak. And we've hit the major bunker inside Iran, where a number of their leadership were taking shelter. At least 4 Al-Quds officers have been killed. Israel is succeeding beyond all expectations in hitting the leadership of their military, hitting the rank and file of their military. Our officers have said that thousands have been killed of their military personnel in different parts of the country. Their ability to fire missiles has been reduced, but obviously everyone in Israel can tell you it's not been eliminated. While you've been on air, Alec, I can tell you that there are reports that 2 have been injured in Tel Aviv and 1 in Petah Tikva, I believe, from the latest rocket fire from Iran just minutes ago. You were just sheltering. That's, I think, why we came on late by a few minutes.
We came on a bit late and apologize for that. If the viewers were waiting at 2 o'clock prompt, we were just emerging from the shelters at that point from another barrage and had to start the broadcast late. And indeed, we're also seeing injuries as well. Continue, Steve.
So here.
and we win in all the benchmarks and the
war on Iran and opposes the effort to topple the regime. One of the other questions I asked Kasif, or one of the other issues that came up as we were talking, he said, look, the Ayatollah leads a murderous regime, and it's not like he's in favor of them. He's happy to see that regime or the Ayatollah removed, but he said it's not for the U.S. and Israel to intervene in Iran to do that. These are questions up to the people. So it was interesting to hear his perspective, and we will certainly hear, as we are on day 9, see if that movement grows. They had come out one time earlier in the week. That was an even smaller number, 15, 20, something like that. Perhaps not even that many. So we'll see where this movement goes and if it grows from here. But especially when you see the majority of a country support a war, it was a noteworthy perspective to hear on the ground in Tel Aviv.
Thank you, Oren. Paul, I'm going to come back to you if I can. We're hearing about Iran's top security officials saying that US President Donald Trump must, quote, pay the price for waging war with Iran. Can you just tell us a bit more about that? Because those are very scary words, aren't they?
Well, certainly in wartime, Ben, you're going to hear some pretty strong rhetoric from both sides. We've been hearing very similar from the US President Donald Trump. He was asked about those words from Larijani on Air Force One. He said he didn't really care. But what we've heard from Larijani as well is that he believes that President Trump has made a miscalculation, believing that what they're doing in Iran right now could be based on what they did in Venezuela. He brought that up, saying that they have made a miscalculation, that it is not the same situation. And we have been hearing from Iranian officials all along that it is a very different situation. Iran is a very different country. They will not respond in the same way as we have seen in other countries. So what we're hearing from inside Iran at the moment is a fairly disjointed message, depending on who you listen to. You have Masoud Pezeshkian, the president, apologizing to neighboring countries, saying that they're not going to strike them anymore unless they see strikes coming from these countries. He then clarified those comments somewhat, suggesting that there will continue to be US military assets and US targets being targeted in those countries. And then you hear from the military, you hear from Larijani, and it is far more bellicose. It is far more hardline things being said that we're hearing. So it's not a consistent message coming from Tehran at this point, potentially pointing to the fact that a number of the leadership have been killed by these US and Israeli strikes. The Ayatollah, the supreme leader, was killed right at the beginning of this war. But what we're hearing from Larijani is obviously trying to project strength, project the fact that they will not be divided, that, as he said, Trump himself will pay a very dear price. Ben?
Okay, Paula Hancock and Oren Lieberman, thank you both so much. We appreciate your reporting. Please stay safe. Onwards, CNN is the first US network to start reporting from the ground in Iran since the conflict began. We're operating there only with government permission. Senior international correspondent Fred Plygan and producer Claudia Otto just filed this new report on the black rain that's falling in the capital following airstrikes and fires at Iran's fuel storage areas.
This is what Tehran is waking up to this morning. The sky above the city is covered in very thick black clouds. You can see that everywhere. That's the west of the city over there, and this is the north of the city. Normally, if you look to that direction, you could actually see the Alborz Mountains, but now all of that is also covered in clouds. That comes after major airstrikes in the south and the west of the city happened last night, where oil installations were hit, oil storage facilities. Apparently also a refinery might have been hit as well. And now you can see this morning that the sky is still very dark. We saw thick black plumes of smoke in the sky yesterday. There were massive fires in the south of the city. But I want to show you something else because it's also raining. But you can see that the rain water is actually black, also saturated, it appears, with oil. And then if we look over there, you can see that the water that's running down here also is black. So that's what's coming down this morning, this sort of oil-filled rain that we have right now on the Iranian capital after the strikes took place.
CNN is the first US network to start reporting from the ground in Iran since the conflict began, and we're operating there only with government permission. Our senior international correspondent, Fred Plygan, and producer Claudia Otto just filed this new report on the black rain following strikes on Iran's fuel storage areas.
This is what Tehran is waking up to this morning. The sky above the city is covered in very thick black clouds. You can see that everywhere. That's the west of the city over there, and this is the north of the city. Normally, if you look to that direction, you could actually see the Alborz Mountains, but now all of that is also covered in clouds. That comes after major airstrikes in the south and the west of the city happened last night, where oil installations were hit, oil storage facilities. Apparently also a refinery might have been hit as well. And now you can see this morning that the sky is still very dark. We saw thick black plumes of smoke in the sky yesterday. There were massive fires in the south of the city. But I want to show you something else because it's also raining. But you can see that the rain water is actually black, also saturated, it appears, with oil. And then if we look over there, you can see that the water that's running down here also is black. So that's what's coming down this morning, this sort of oil-filled rain that we have right now on the Iranian capital after those strikes took place.
A member of Iran's Assembly of Experts says a new supreme leader could be chosen within the next 24 hours. While no selection has taken place yet, according to state media, the senior cleric said all 88 officials are impatiently waiting for the right conditions to hold a session where they will pick the next leader. CNN's Isabel Young has all the details for us.
Now that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah...
Don't kill your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr.
ruling over Iran with a brutal iron fist. Whoever is appointed matters because it's going to answer one key question. Is it a team that's going to double down on Khamenei's repressive policies, or will it take the chance to recalibrate? These are the top contenders for the position. First up, we have Mojtaba Khamenei. He's 56 years old, he's the second son of Khamenei, and has strong links with the Revolutionary Guard as well as the besieged military forces, which is important if he wants to continue ruling in the same vein as his father had been. He's been branded as the frontrunner, but father-to-son succession goes against the ideals of the regime, which overthrew a hereditary monarchy in 1979. We also have Ali Reza Arafi, a confidant of Khamenei. He was appointed to senior and strategically very sensitive positions and is part of the clerical establishment. He's also part of the three-member leadership council, which is currently running Iran. He's apparently very tech-savvy, fluent in English and Arabic, and is generally seen as more of a moderate. But he's not known as a political heavyweight and doesn't have close ties to the security establishment. Then you have conservative clerics like Mohammed Mehdi Bagheri or Hasham Hosseini Boucheri, less known publicly, but reportedly more close to conservative elements, or the former head of the judiciary, Sadegh Larajani, whose brother Ali is currently the powerful national security head. Outside of those runners, the picture gets a little bit more complicated with the likes of Hassan Khomeini, the grandson of the founder of the Islamic Republic, who has traditionally been seen as closer to reformist factions of Iranian politics, but obviously also carries religious and revolutionary legitimacy. His younger brother, Ali, has also been making headlines recently, leading some analysts to suggest that he's positioning himself. And finally, there's the potential of the system to pivot and go for someone like Hassan Rouhani, the former president who hails from more moderate camps of Iranian politics, but is still very close to elements of the security establishment to take the realms. Whoever is appointed as the next supreme leader is going to need the backing of the IRGC, or at least portions of it. And they'll need to act quickly to consolidate power amongst the various elected and non-elected officials that have been ruling the country so far. On top of that, their appointment could be short-lived, as this person could be a clear target for Israel and the US. US President Donald Trump has weighed in to speculation, saying that several of the people his government had viewed as potential leaders are now dead. He said, I guess the worst case would be that we do this and somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person. He says, we don't want that to happen.
An Israeli strike on a hotel in central Beirut overnight has killed at least 4 people, adding to the death toll of nearly 300 in Lebanon since Israel began its bombing campaign on Monday. Those numbers are coming into us from the Lebanese Health Ministry. We are also learning more details about a raid in the border region that reportedly killed at least 41 people. A resident in the village where it occurred called it a night of hell. Israeli commandos hunting for the remains of an airman missing for decades went into a village where a firefight with Hezbollah militants ensued. The Israel Defense Forces says none of its soldiers were. This is a war that should never have happened and benefits no one. Those those words from China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He's calling for an immediate end to the Iran war and urging all sides to return to the negotiating table. Otherwise, he warns, the flames of war risk spreading. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to host President Trump at a summit in Beijing in just a few weeks. And CNN's Stephen Zhang is in Beijing for us and joins us now. Thank you so much for being with me, Stephen. China's foreign minister says the US should help manage differences ahead of that big summit. You were at that news conference. What more did he say?
Yeah, I actually asked the question about the potential impact of this U.S. war with Iran on the planned visit by President Trump to Beijing later this month. Now, he didn't answer the question directly. Here's what he said.
This year is indeed a big year for China-U.S. relations. The agenda for high-level exchanges with the U.S. is on the table. Required is for both sides to make thorough preparations to create a conducive environment to manage existing differences and to remove unnecessary disruptions.
This is the scene of destruction in Tehran earlier this week after an airstrike wrecked the Geisha Street complex, one of the main centers for Iran's infamous morality police. Countless civilians were imprisoned, abused, and humiliated there. As Jemana Karachi reports, its destruction has triggered a range of emotions from those who endured cruelty at the hands of the morality police.
They terrorized Iranian women for decades, the regime's enforcers of so-called morality. This week, one of the most notorious morality police centers in Tehran was hit in a strike. In text and audio messages from inside Iran, women shared with us their relief when they heard that place is no more.
I'm crying because I'm so happy to know that it doesn't exist. And I'm crying because I remember the way I was insulted and pushed around in that building.
I will never forget that one of these officers took a handkerchief that had been lying on the ground and rubbed it on my face and wiped my makeup off. Our time there was deeply traumatizing. I always thought about how I would go there and take my revenge if the government fell. I'm experiencing so many conflicting emotions at this time.
These satellite images from before and after the strike show the damage sustained by the Geisha Street complex that also housed other regime security apparatus. Fatimeh Mossadegh says state security held her there twice. Hearing the news brought back a nightmare she's tried for years to leave behind in Iran.
I was in the little cell. I have a friend. She was in the next room. And we tried to be calm with the sound of crying each other. Yeah, she shouted me, cry louder, I want to hear you. Sorry.
Fatimeh, a women's rights activist and mother, was locked up in that compound twice, the second time for 16 days of interrogations, accused of working with foreign states. She says she was threatened with physical and sexual abuse that many detainees face.
The moment when you heard that it was hit, how did you feel?
Too complicated. I'm not happy. I don't like war. But at the same time, I think, there is no place like that for my people, for me to touch.
For the regime's victims, holy seeing the walls that once caged them now crumble brings a complicated release of emotions. Thank you, Israel. A woman filming this video says her house was damaged in a strike here, but it's okay, she says, happy to sacrifice it for the young people who were killed by the regime. This is what was hit in that strike, a base used by government security forces. This video from 2022 during the Woman Life Freedom Uprising captured the savagery that emanated from that base. About a dozen agents who operated out of that place surround an unarmed protester, ram him with a motorbike, beat him with batons, and then this. Is Poria Alipur, that terrifying night forever etched on his face. In a message, he told us, "I am happy to see the destruction of this criminal base. This regime must be destroyed so a new Iran can rise." Poria, like other victims, says he's happy to see these strikes take out the centers of the regime's rebellion. But at the same time,
How's your year?
complicated.
Oh, your side jobs. I need more.
artist was killed in a strike that targeted a regime security building near his family's home. One of more than 1,000 civilians killed so far in this war, according to activists. It's the bitter cost that comes with this measure of long-awaited justice for the regime's countless victims. Joanna Karache, CNN.
We will be right back.
I'm Erin Burnett here in Tel Aviv on this Sunday night here. New today, Tehran residents are dealing with the aftermath of strikes on key oil storage sites, from Israeli jets. This video we geolocated. It shows the massive fire and smoke plume at a facility just outside of Tehran. And again, you may have seen some of those billowing images on social media sites. Geolocated that particular video. It is one of several oil facilities which were hit and were still burning as of this morning. Senior international correspondent Fred Pleiken is in Tehran for us, and we will note that CNN can only operate in Iran with the country's government approval.
It's an absolutely apocalyptic scene here. We've just made it to the Shahran oil depot, which was attacked last night in a massive wave of airstrikes. We heard those going on for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, with massive thuds and then explosions that we could hear. And that thick black plume of smoke, we saw that last night. And now we're actually seeing it up close. What we're also seeing is that some of those destroyed storage tanks are still on fire. There's still flames originating from them. You can also see here that the area around here is also completely destroyed. There's people here actually working on this electricity pole to try and get the electricity back. And then this tanker vehicle here also that is right in front of the gate has been completely destroyed as well. The front gate of the facility also in complete ruins. The facility appears to be completely in ruins now after these massive airstrikes, and again, still on fire, still burning. And you can see that thick black smoke through the entire city across all of Tehran. It's been raining this morning in Tehran. There was oil mixed into the rain, so this is definitely a massive incident that is still going on.
That's our Fred Pleiken in Tehran. And joining me now is Michael Eisenberg. He's an advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, also a general partner at Aleph, which is an early stage venture capital fund. All right, I have a lot I want to ask you about, Michael, but let's just start with where Fred was and the discussion out there about what is being hit in terms of infrastructure and whether that makes infrastructure both here and in the Gulf region a target. What can you tell us about those strikes that happened in Tehran?
First, it's good to be back and see you again, Aaron. Second of all, the Iranians have attacked our infrastructure. They fired on various sites in Israel that are infrastructure sites. So we didn't start firing on their infrastructure. They did. And this is not Iranian civilian infrastructure. This is IRGC infrastructure. These storage tanks belong and serve the IRGC, the evil death cult regime of Ayatollah Khamenei and whoever replaces him. And so this is not just any strike. This strike is a targeted strike against terrorist infrastructure.
Right. So you're saying that infrastructure, you do not view it as civilian, where Fred was. You view that as military infrastructure, IRGC.
No, it's not civilian infrastructure. It's IRGC infrastructure, whereas the Iranians and Hezbollah, by the way, have fired here on civilian infrastructure.
All right. So in this context, and I want to ask you about the leadership in Iran in just a moment. But first of all, the context of what Prime Minister Netanyahu, you're an advisor to him, he said the moment of truth is approaching. Is there more that you can tell us about what that means for the next coming days?
I think what the Prime Minister is saying is there are once-in-a-generation opportunities to change the course of history. And there's once-in-a-generation opportunity for the people of Iran to take their destiny into their own hands, to take their future into their own hands, to break away from this regime. And I think when the Prime Minister, who's spoken to the Iranian people time and again over the last couple, stand up and be the great Iranian people that you once were, before the death cult hijacked you some 47 years ago. And so hopefully the conditions for the Iranian people to take their own future into their hands are being created now. And hopefully we'll look back and look at that speech of the prime minister and say, wow, that was a Churchillian speech that really defined this moment in history.
So okay, then in that context, let me ask you about what Kareem Sadjapur just said. And I know there's been a lot of question marks, so maybe you can shed some light on this about who is running Iran. Obviously, in a practical sense, it's been Ali Larijani in recent days. But in terms of the supreme leader itself, right, this week long, over a week now, and we didn't have one. And then it was a 24-hour time period. And then today, maybe we did. And Kareem's saying most likely it appears it is Ayatollah Khamenei's son, which he points out is a hypocrisy when you say it cannot be nepotism. Do you have clarity on who it is? And do you think they're not telling us because they're worried that then you're formally going to kill him? I mean, what's happening?
First of all, I don't know. But I saw that President Pezeshkian, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, said, hey, we're not firing anymore on the Gulf states. And then 10 minutes later, they attacked the Dubai airport. So the answer may be nobody's fully in charge of Iran at this point, and they're on the run. And I'll just say this, per what the prime minister said, that nobody is immune. It's a high-risk job. Let's just say that.
To be the supreme leader.
It's a high-risk job. Many of those jobs are high-risk jobs right now. The Israeli military said that if they gathered to elect somebody today, they should watch out. And those are high-risk jobs. You should not want to be a dictator over the Iranian people, a ruthless dictator, which both Ayatollah Khamenei and it said about his son, who's a hardliner, is as well.
And do you read anything into, does the prime minister read anything into the fact that Iran isn't coming out and saying who it is? Right? That they're trying to say it's done, but they're not saying who it is. In the context of what you just said, high-risk job.
Yeah. Look, I don't know.
Yeah.
They make their own decisions, but they should just make the right one and surrender. They should make the right decision and just surrender. For the sake of the Iranian people, they should surrender. They should listen and heed President Trump and just surrender.
Michael.
We begin with what we know right now as the U.S. and Israel's war on Iran enters its 9th day. Just moments ago, Israeli military says it launched what it called wide-scale strikes across Iran. Just last night, Israel struck for the first time oil storage sites and refineries in the capital of Tehran. Those flames you're seeing there. This morning, millions of the city's residents woke up to a sky filled with thick black clouds like those. CNN's team inside Tehran saw blackened rain falling, appearing to be saturated with oil. Several Iranian clerics say a new supreme leader has been chosen after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the very first hours of this war. They have not yet announced the name of the new supreme leader. And after Iran's president suggested on Saturday that strikes on fellow Gulf nations might end, countries across the Middle East, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, are in fact reporting new strikes today. You can see the results of one right there. All this comes as President Donald Trump, who has called for Iran's unconditional surrender, says he is not ruling out sending U.S. ground troops into Iran. It would be a remarkable step, and of course, great danger for those forces. My colleague, CNN anchor Erin Burnett, she is live in Tel Aviv. She'll be joining me for the next several hours. Erin, I understand that there have been new air raid signals where you are.
Yes, we've had several just over the past few hours. One actually ending just a minute or two before I came here to come on the air with you, Jim. And interestingly, you know, when those come in, sometimes you can see the actual interceptions or missiles. Sometimes you hear them and may not see them. Earlier today, we heard, I did not see, but just very near where we are, just a few blocks away, they say less than half a mile.
Get ready. The original Mega Meat Sale is coming to Super Saver. Stock up on beef, pork, and chicken during our biggest meat event of the year.
People there believe that it may have been some sort of a cluster munition. We don't know that to be true, but there were people that they'd gone into the shelter, and so they were not killed in that situation. But this is what's happening here, but also across the Gulf, as you know, and in Tehran, where they don't get the air raid siren warnings of the strikes that are happening and covering that sky with smoke and that acid, black, oily rain that you just described, Jim, I want to bring in our CNN colleague, Nick Payton-Walsh, because there is obviously this other front in the war. You've got the Israel-Lebanon border. Israeli soldiers were killed there this morning, and that marks Israel's first military death since the war began. So, Nick, as this widens, as this is escalating at this hour, what more are you learning about the circumstances surrounding these soldiers' deaths?
Yeah, they appear to have been near a bulldozer at the time of this incident, and an anti-tank rocket of some description fired by Hezbollah, causing these two first fatalities. 14 other Israeli soldiers have since moves began on the other side of the border behind me, since this phase of the conflict began, being injured. Now, you're joining me as we've been hearing over the last hour or so quite regular, what sounds like outgoing artillery fire, presumably Israeli. We've had alerts here as well. Hezbollah claimed to have attacked on this side of the border 13 separate times. So clearly intensification. I think it's fair to say at this stage, a slightly more active Hezbollah than perhaps you might have expected, given claims over the Israelis to have had quite good control in some of the buffer zone here. And I think possibly too, discussion growing about exactly what the extent of the Israeli presence over the border behind me is or will be. We know that they said they were putting more reinforcements in at the beginning of this a few days ago around the 5 positions they retained. These two casualties we've seen, these two deaths, suggest that something wider is afoot. There are indications around here of more military maneuver than we saw when we were here a few days ago. But it comes at a key time, though, Erin, of course, while Israel is engaged on two fronts. Another strike wave against Iran just announced. The next phase, they called this recent move to hit various parts of the oil infrastructure of Iran, causing that thick black smoke. And also, too, they claim to have hit some key leadership here, but also, too, inside of Beirut as well, saying they hit some key leaders last night in a strike on a hotel there. So clearly intensification here and in Iran, and the constant, I think, question now, as we've been discussing, exactly where is the announcement of the new supreme leader? A startling moment, frankly, to have this confusion, Erin.
Yeah, startling, and you know, their rush to do it, that it must be done 24 hours. Then here it's been done, but who is it? Is it done, right? That unbelievable confusion within that, we know something very significant, although hard to read through it. Nick Payton-Walsh, thank you very much. Me in Israel, just north up in Haifa along that Lebanon front. Countries across the Gulf countries right now, that's Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, enduring another wave of drone and missile strikes today. State-run media says Kuwait's Social Security headquarters was hit in a drone strike. Obviously, that's a civilian location. Footage geolocated by CNN showed that building. It's about 22 stories in flames, and we've geolocated the video that you're looking at on your screen right now. Saudi Arabia has released new video of one of many drone and missile attacks that it's experienced in recent days. This one showing a drone interception, they say. The country now reporting its first deaths since the start of the war. The Saudi Civil Defense says that 2 people were killed and 12 others injured after a military projectile struck a residential facility. Talking to sources in the United Arab Emirates, they're talking to me, senior government officials, about 4 casualties, and obviously the incredible frustration at this point that they feel in the position that they are put in. Our first award is in Erbil, Iraq, which was also targeted by 2 explosive-laden drones late last night. So, Clarissa, what more can you tell us about this new wave of strikes that we're seeing, where you are, of course, across the region, and how Gulf countries are responding?
So, Erin, those last 2 strikes on the Erbil airport did not appear to have caused any casualties. But last night was a very heavy night with at least 1 Kurdish Peshmerga fighter killed at the Erbil airport and also in the city of Sulaymaniyah. Just relentless bombardment. And this is coming predominantly, Erin, from Iran-backed militias inside Iraq. And that is putting a real strain on the relationship between the leadership here in Iraqi Kurdistan and the government in Baghdad. And just last night, we saw images of lawmakers in the Iraqi parliament breaking out into chants of death to Israel, death to America. Those lawmakers reportedly affiliated with a party that is attached to some of these Iran-backed militias, and we have seen the U.S. conducting a number of airstrikes against them. The irony of these attacks, though, Aaron, as we have seen across the region, is that while they may be targeting Americans, they are not, for the most part, killing Americans. They are killing Kurds and Emiratis and Pakistanis and Saudis. And that is a big part of why you are seeing this mounting frustration. You talked about those attacks in the Gulf, which have not let up despite that promise from Iran's president Pezeshkian yesterday that these attacks would stop. They have continued at pace, not just, as you mentioned, of course, that building in Kuwait that we have seen engulfed in flames, but also a desalination plant in Bahrain. This is civilian infrastructure. And it's becoming clear that for Gulf leaders, and sources I have been speaking to in that area confirm this with me, that patience is really running thin, and that while they don't want this to escalate further, they are getting closer to a point where they may feel that they have to act out in self-defense. And I think you saw that borne out, as we discussed last night as well, in the Emirati leader's comments, very rare comments for him, calling Iran the enemy and saying in no uncertain terms, do not mistake our patience for weakness. So a real warning being leveled there to the Iranians, and here in Iraqi Kurdistan, strong words from the leadership for the government in Baghdad to clamp down on these Iran-backed Iraqi militias, Aaron.
Iran's neighbors, they're continuing to report new strikes, despite Iran's president saying that they would not hit those countries unless those countries originate attacks on Iran first. Now, in Kuwait, officials say that they've been fighting off drones and missiles. One strike set fire to a high-rise government building. This morning, take a look at this. You can see smoke rising as firefighters work to get it under control. We're also hearing more reports of strikes in the UAE, specifically Dubai, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia as well. Let's go now to CNN's Paula Hancock's in Dubai. And you gave us last hour just the remarkable number of strikes since the start of this conflict on the UAE.
Yeah, Victor, the UAE really has been singled out as having the most retaliation from Iran. We have seen over 1,500 missiles and drones that have been fired towards the UAE, which is remarkable. We know that the vast majority of them have been intercepted by the military here. We know well over 90% have been intercepted. But of course, interceptions themselves bring their own risks. We know that debris falls from those intercepted projectiles in the air. In fact, just last night, Saturday night, there was a Pakistani driver here in Dubai who was killed by debris from an interception falling on his car. So that brings the death toll here to 4. We know over 100 people have been injured, although authorities say many of them are minor injuries. So there's been no let-up whatsoever in the attacks against Gulf nations, despite.
You'll never worry that AAA car batteries are fresh. They go straight to market, whether it's from our AAA-approved auto.
In the Gulf as to whether or not that was going to change anything. The fact is it didn't. We saw Saudi Arabia, for example, having almost 24 drone strikes overnight, and also Bahrain with a water desalination plant being targeted. Victor?
Now in its 9th day, President Trump's military campaign has launched a reckoning against Iran, throwing it into disarray after the killing of the supreme leader, combined with a relentless aerial bombardment all across the country. But as Iran remains defiant, there are mounting questions about Trump's main objective, as his administration struggles to convey the endgame to a world on edge, a region at war, and a very skeptical American public. War entering a new phase, Israel launching a fresh wave of attacks targeting Iran's oil storage sites. And stunning new video from our CNN team on the ground shows black rain falling in the city of Tehran. Meanwhile, Iran is retaliating with attacks in the Gulf region, despite its president suggesting they would end. So let's begin all this sort of coverage with CNN's Nick Walsh. He's live for us in Tel Aviv. So Nick, walk us through what happened overnight and what's ahead.
Morning, a pivotal moment really for the war here. Let me just give you a quick snapshot of this morning here in Tel Aviv. As often sirens, but abnormally a projectile flew overhead of where we are. Elements landing in the sea behind me, but also black smoke now visible on the northern Tel Aviv skyline. Sounds of impacts, always hard to tell. That's munitions or debris. So a sign that Iran, despite suggestions its missile stockpiles are diminished, is still trying to hit Tel Aviv here, but a frankly far more apocalyptic scene in Tehran. My colleague Fred Pleitgen reporting the black oil residue coming down in rain, landing around his feet. Black smoke, that's a result of Israeli strikes, as what they call the next phase of the conflict here, going after infrastructure, oil storage facilities that they say the military in Iran have indeed been using. On top of that as well, we now have this, it appears, the desalination infrastructure in the Gulf is being targeted by Iran. That's huge because these Gulf neighbors, dragged into the war, frankly, by Iran's retaliatory strikes and what Iran says are US bases in these territories. Obviously, desalination so vital for sustaining life in those hot, arid countries. That is escalating fast. But really, what I said to you, it's a pivotal moment, is that in Iran, we are told through senior clerics speaking to state media that they have chosen a new supreme leader. That's utterly vital because President Trump has somewhat far-fetchedly said he wants to have a hand in choosing who that person is. He's ruled out the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who an Israeli airstrike killed over a week ago now. But some of the hints from state media suggest that indeed Mojtaba Khamenei might actually be the choice of the assembly of experts. Still hard to tell at this point, and I should point out we've had multiple days of suggesting that this pivotal choice for Iran is imminent. But indeed, if it is somebody who President Trump has ruled out, is appointed, that potentially suggests we are far from any kind of resolution here. Although, look, listening to President Trump talking on Air Force One, coming back to Washington recently, he's defining what surrender means. He's demanded surrender, and you get the sense, really, that he can declare this war over at any given point, despite the region seeing it nothing but escalate. Manu?
All right, Nick Peyton Walsh live for us in Tel Aviv. Thank you so much. And here in the room to provide some key context on the war with Iran so far, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Senator Layton. Colonel Layton, thanks for being here. We're now in day 9 of this war, and so much has happened. It's really hard sometimes for viewers to keep track of everything that's gone on. So can you give us an overview of what we've seen so far in the attacks carried out by the United States and Israel?
Absolutely, Manu. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot going on here. And one of the key elements is really the fact that all of these areas here have been struck multiple times by both U.S. and Israeli aircraft and as well Tomahawk missiles. So the concentration is basically in the western country, like this area right here, the Iran border. And then in addition to that, we also have the areas right in the south, right along this coastline of the Persian Gulf. So what this really means is that each of these areas has become really concentrated. Both the U.S. and note this,